You've got this essential services fund worth $3.6 billion for pay rises, $1.9 billion said to be going to teachers. Why have you got that fund just over the next 4 years? Because once you give the public servants a pay rise, it goes out ad infinitum, doesn't it?
Well, we've budgeted for that fund to be able to help us deal with the critical shortages that are affecting so much and so many of our public services. What we are doing is introducing a new system that is based on cooperation with our workforce, that isn't based on confrontation. Of course, there's always going to be tension between governments and its workforce, but this is a prudent step forward to support the introduction of a new bargaining system here in New South Wales, which is what we promised to do.
All right, there's a decision still to be made on Eraring or negotiations. Do you have any sort of estimate on what that might cost keeping that open?
Yeah, I don't want the Eraring power station to stay open a day longer than it needs to or a cent more than it has to. Eraring does rank as a pretty disastrous privatisation. That means we aren't in control of our energy future like other states are who kept their public power generators in public ownership. What we are not doing through this budget is negotiating with Origin, and I will again take this opportunity to send them a very clear message that they've done very well from that privatisation. This is not an opportunity to game the people of New South Wales.
You spoke with the Australian today about Eraring and the fact that I think you called it one of the worst decisions ever made of the former coalition government to sell it off. Care to expand on that?
I stand by that. Yeah, I mean, they sold this power station off a decade ago for $50 million. Now we face ourselves with the prospect that a private owner who answers to private investors decides its future, not a government that answers to the people of New South Wales. We would never be in this position where a private owner of a power station decides such a critical part of our energy market had that privatisation not occurred. What we are doing in this budget to help undo that damage is to provide an additional $800 million to connect the renewable energy zones to the grid faster than otherwise, and we are setting up the New South Wales Energy Security Corporation so the people of New South Wales again have a bit of a say in the power markets that affect their budgets and affect this state.
Mr Mookhey, the bottom line is, as much as you criticise the coalition government over that, the former Labor government started that process by selling off the generation trading rights, didn't they? In fact, Morris Yemi used to say over and over again he needed to privatise the generators to keep the lights on. In fact, a man you've called your mentor, Michael Egan, wanted to sell the generators himself, but State Labor Conference knocked him back and he sold the TAB. So the former Labor government wasn't as anti-privatisation as you and Mr Minns, weren't they?
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. I mean, the previous Labor governments and previous Labor treasurers have taken different views. And I think both the Premier and I have been pretty upfront that not all the fault belongs to the other side of politics, but most of it does, given they sold most of the assets. And equally, I just make the point with Michael Egan. I think he made that policy when I was in Year 9, so I'm not going to profess to be an expert in precisely the arguments he made at the time, but I am prepared to say that I think that not every Labor government in the past has been perfect.
All right, so no privatisation lives on under this government. Look, we had Michael Sukkar on before. He's a shadow federal housing minister. And he said that your housing package, for example, $300 million to Landcom, is a drop in the bucket in terms of what's needed. What's your reaction to that?
My reaction to that is that what we are showing is the difference a publicly owned company can make when it goes back into the market to deliver housing for a public that really desperately needs them. We're the first to accept it's not going to solve the problem, but it sends a very clear signal about how this government wants to add supply. We recognise the fact that we need to do a lot so people trust that the additional homes are being well designed, well supported, being able to be introduced into their neighbourhoods, into their communities with the accompanying investment in the infrastructure that they depend on. So we're making the clear point. This is just the start of what we think we can do with this jewel that it remains under public ownership, and we of course accept that we have much more to do. I'd also just point out to the Federal Shadow Housing Minister that I don't know who that is, but I would point out that had we had more building under the previous government, under his side of politics, we wouldn't be in this position here. For the last 8 years, New South Wales has missed its housing targets that his party set.
All right, finally, there's probably a lot of people watching today who are hoping for more cost of living relief, your toll relief, your relief for first home buyers, I guess your flag before the election. Is it inflation or is it the budgetary position which makes you tap the brakes on that one?
No, we've got a clear strategy here. It's immediate relief paired with reform. So there's more than $1 billion in this budget year to help people with their power prices. We are rolling out to 700,000 motorists a weekly toll cap. No more than $60 is what they will pay. We've also been pretty careful to make sure that public transport fares stay affordable as well. And we are making that point because we understand just how much pressure families are under.
Treasurer Daniel Mookhey, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on.